Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to another round of Career Coach Office Hours. Woohoo! I normally do the show Friday at 9 a.m. and Tuesday at noon. And today I had to do it a little bit later. I had a doctor's appointment at 8:30, and I'd scheduled this 6 months ago. So didn't want to postpone it. You got to take care of your health. So I'll just simply say twice a week. Tuesdays at noon, Fridays at 9 a.m. Eastern. I spend some time answering questions from people. And if you have one for me and you'd like to send it to me in advance, like so many others did for today's show and Tuesday's show, email me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And in the subject line, put the phrase office hours. This way I know what it's about. I can set it aside and come back to you when I have a chance. And I try and do them before the show and then just rehash what I write to people, but sometimes I just don't have time. The schedule's too full with one thing or another. And I'll also remind you, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. Mention that you watch the show. I like knowing I'm helping some folks. I'm also on YouTube. You can subscribe there at JobSearchTV.com. My podcast, No BS Job Search Advice Radio, is available Monday through Friday. It's #1 in Apple Podcasts for job search, with more than 2,200 episodes over more than 10 years. It is a huge library of information about job search. So lots of different ways that you can get information from me. And it's different than when I work one-on-one with someone. When I coach someone, it's all personalized for you. And if you're interested in my coaching you, you can schedule time for a free discovery call at my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. And you can schedule a free discovery call, schedule coaching. I'd love to help you. So I've got a mountain of questions here. And I'll just remind you, if you have a question for me, put it into chat. I'd be happy to try and get it answered during this show. First question, I just think this is obnoxious. My boss purposely makes all interview candidates wait 1 hour past the scheduled interview time. This is their filtering message, as they refuse to consider anyone who leaves during the 1 hour wait. And then they ask, is this legal? Yeah, it's legal. It's stupid, and it's not illegal. And I say this because there's no law that prevents people from being kept waiting. But it's stupidity. Like, what person sits for 1 hour and allows themselves to be treated disrespectfully? I do remember a time where I was still doing search, and someone had taken over in a function with my client, and the replacement person asked me to come out and meet with him. So I drove 2 hours to his office, was kept waiting for an hour, and I sat there, and 20 minutes into the wait, I walked over to reception and I asked, I'm curious, #1, is this typical? I'm hoping not. And #2, how long do you think he'll be? And I got my answer, and it wound up being 35 minutes. I received a lot of apologies, yada, yada, yada. I wonder what it would be like for that hiring manager if an applicant kept them waiting for 1 hour. I also wonder what kind of job this is, that he or she wants to hire a sheep, someone who's willing to sit for 1 hour's time without any sort of explanation for a delay, that this is a good thing to do. So, it's not illegal. It's just stupid. And I would say to you, I hope that people who are kept waiting post reviews on Glassdoor or anywhere else indicating that this person does that. And, it should get exposed for what it is, stupidity. The next question, there are two questions that are kind of similar. So this happened from earlier in the week, this first one. A recruiter scheduled a Zoom interview on September 7th, but was a no-show. I emailed him and he said he was unexpectedly out of the office, so he rescheduled for September 8th at 11 a.m. 10 minutes before, he changed it to 1:30, but he didn't show up for that interview. And then the second question, similar to that, if you apply for a job and the person interviewing keeps changing the interview dates and doesn't respond in a timely way after you respond about availability for the interview, is it a good indicator that's probably not a good place to work? I start off with the premise of, in both instances, we have a person who's remarkably busy. And I'll simply say, perhaps the first one is innocent. They've gotten pulled into things. They're preoccupied. But I find it's rude to stand someone up. Much like being kept waiting for an hour, standing someone up. Like if a candidate did it to an HR person, they go ballistic. I sit in recruiter groups because I did that for so many years, and I listen to people who complain about being ghosted, about being kept waiting as an HR person or as a hiring manager. And it's deservedly, they complain about that because it's bad behavior. In these two cases, you have people who don't really treat the potential hire as being valuable. You're just another body. You're an object. You're a brick. And as such, they treat you rudely. That makes no sense, but firms do that and they think they can get away with it. So coming back to the first question, they didn't show up. My standard response to this is to send an email saying, "Are you okay?" And that's the subject line. And the body reads, "I find it remarkable that you missed the first one, and the second one you rescheduled on the same day and then didn't show up. But are you okay? Because I find it amazing that I haven't heard from you to reschedule. So, just tell me you're okay and then shut up. And can we move this forward once they respond? Because after all, you have treated me disrespectfully. And if I did the same thing with you, you wouldn't be happy either. So let's move this forward now. The second one, if the person keeps changing the interview dates and doesn't respond in a timely way, again, I think of these as people who are overwhelmed, overworked, and they're in a situation where they're being pulled in lots of different directions concurrently. So they're not sitting at their computer all day being prepared to respond. They're in meetings, they're talking to individuals, they're interviewing people, not in a timely way. I'm not sure whether that means you're expecting instantaneous response or within the hour, and they have a schedule, and they're probably doing their own scheduling. Does it indicate that it's not a good place to work? I wouldn't go that far, but I think there's a cue there that you might notice if you decide to continue this interview process with this firm, that you might notice that people are too busy. And if this happens with a second person, you can politely pull out of the consideration saying, I'm getting a message from this firm that you people are overwhelmed. HR rescheduled appointments multiple times, never getting back to me in a timely way. Now you're doing the same thing. I'm going to take a pass. And then walk away cleanly and don't yell, scream, or throw a tantrum. What do you do when you utilize certain skills related to your current job, have firsthand experience and or knowledge of skills outside your organization, but ultimately are disqualified when you apply to other jobs? I think what this person is saying is, I have a good background in my current firm, and I have marketable skills to other organizations, but I'm not getting hired. I think that's what that means. I can't be absolutely sure, but that's the way I'm going to address it here. And the answer is, if you're not getting interviews, your resume stinks, your resume and LinkedIn profile are not congruent, your resume doesn't make a case for that you're qualified for these roles that you're applying for, or you're applying aspirationally and there's nothing to indicate that you're qualified to do these jobs. All of these are on you. Because again, I'm working with the assumption that you're competent at what you do. But if other organizations are trying to hire, your resume is missing the boat, or you're not networking into organizations, or don't have enough relationships to get yourself in the door, let alone through an interview process. If you're getting interviewed, you don't interview well. It's that simple. And you may discover during interviews you don't have the knowledge base that these firms are looking for. If you're getting to final rounds of interviews and you're not getting hired, something surfaced in previous rounds that made you not the front runner, but they want to still consider you just in case. And you may also be making more money than what a firm is looking for, or a lot less than what they're willing to pay, which they pick up as a signal of not really being as qualified. So, next question is, what are some sneaky useful features on LinkedIn? There are two that I really like, and I used to use these all the time when I did recruiting. The first one was company pages. Company pages, when you go there, it's not about the firm per se, but it's who works there at the firm, who might be first, second, or third level connections that I might be able to network to or connect with to get, in my case, if I was doing recruiting, find out about hiring that was going on. And for you as a job hunter, network into an organization or to develop a relationship with someone at that firm that might cause you to get hired. So to me, that's one that I really like, is company pages. The other one is on people's profiles. And most individuals don't really notice them and don't think of how to use them well. And that's in the right-hand column where there's this feature that says people who looked at this profile also looked at these profiles. And what sometimes happens is you're able to follow people with comparable backgrounds, or often you'll discover people within the same organization. Again, it's a networking approach. If you're trying to hire people, these are people with similar backgrounds. If you're looking for a job, these are people who might work at that organization, or since you've looked at a profile with a particular background, they might have a similar skill set at a similar level. And thus what you're able to do is find an organization that you didn't know about up until that point that might be interested in hiring. Next question. What if HR felt that my salary expectation was too high? And they didn't find out what the position offered, but in general told them about my salary. So you didn't know what they were willing to pay going in. How can I go back to them and say I'm negotiable if that's what's keeping them from hiring me? So I want to read the full question as sent to me, because there's a nuance here. What if the HR felt that my salary expectation was high? I did not find out what the position offered, but in general told them my salary. What can I go back, or how can I go back to them and say I'm negotiable if that's what's keeping them to hire me? So what I pick up here is English language skills. Oral communications may be an issue. Certainly written communications are an issue. And that may be a factor as well as to how much they're willing to pay you. And I have to say pay you because they may be prepared to pay someone else more for whom oral and written communication skills might be superior. Now, how can you go back? Easy. And what you do is you message HR and you say to them, I really liked what I saw. manager was terrific. The job was very, very interesting to me. I just want you to know, when I spoke about salary, I'm willing to be a little flexible here if that's going to be the thing that keeps you from wanting to hire me. And then you leave it at that. Now, we don't know if they ultimately rejected this person already and whether this has any possibility of reopening a door. But this is the only way to really try. It's either that or you do it with the hiring manager and let them know, hi, I just thought this was a great opportunity. I was so impressed by you and the team. I'm willing to be flexible. Maybe you can go to bat with HR and see what you can do to move this thing forward. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But when you're interviewing with HR and they're asking you about compensation, you're right. Most of the time, they're not going to tell you what they're prepared to pay unless you ask them. So when you're revealing what you're looking for, you have to immediately follow up and say, and what's the range your firm is prepared to pay? I understand it might be anywhere within that range, but could you give me a sense of what the range is so that you know at that point? You can disclose at that stage that you'd be flexible, or after the interview, you'd be flexible. Whatever it is, you've got to ask the follow-up question to identify what they're prepared to pay. It is an indication that this person, okay, sorry. Is it too much or out of place to send multiple emails to a recruiter in anticipation of a response after a successful interview? Yes, you're a spammer. You're annoying. It's not like you're the only person that they are representing or trying to fill jobs with. You may think it was a successful interview. They may think differently. So multiple emails are just obnoxious. You are looking for attention. Normally, after the first one, where you say, just want you to know I'm interested, and when do you think I might hear about next steps? If they're interested, they're going to respond. Or they'll tell you we're interviewing 27 more people, or some message back. Multiple interviews is just an annoyance. It accomplishes nothing. If anything, when I did search and on day one, I got a message that said, I really love that job you sent me to. When do you think I'll hear back? I'd respond. And then the next day, if I heard from them again, I'm going, okay, I told you what I expect to hear and you're ignoring me. And phone calls are no different. If anything, they're worse. I never took a phone call from someone under those circumstances because I already told you what to expect and you're just being a baby looking for attention. Well, tell me something different. When I have something different, I would tell them. When I didn't, so be it. You got to sit there and be patient. Hawking people, pushing people, cajoling them. You think it's a tactic? It isn't. It's an annoyance. If you look at a resume of two candidates, one who's worked for many different companies, like 1 to 2 years at each one, and one that has worked at only one company for 7 years, who would you hire and why? Ignore all other factors. False dichotomy. It's not one or the other. A person who's been with an organization for 7 years obviously is showing stability, and they're going to be there for a while. Usually, I'm not going to go into the many exceptions to that, but that's what firms think. If you've changed jobs every 1 to 2 years, well, if they're hiring you for a project that's going to run 4 years or 3 years, you're not going to be there for delivery, right? So from their standpoint, they're looking at someone with that background and going, don't know if he's going to be there, don't know if she's going to be there. And they worry. And when they worry, they defer. So that's one issue. But the second one is, if there are valid reasons why a person's worked 1 to 2 years at a firm, you have to take that into consideration. And the third one, and all my consulting clients felt this way. If a person's been at one organization for 7 years, they know how something is done at that one firm, but they don't know how it's done elsewhere. And in consulting in particular, they want to have people with a wide range of capabilities. Thus, your experience with only one firm is disappointing to them. They want to see much more. So don't hesitate to indicate that don't hesitate to apply if you're a 1 to 2 year person. Always try. But this question of 1 to 2 years versus 7, it's bull. Next question. We're on to the hiring phase here. Which is the least expensive method for recruitment? Answer: someone walks in your door who's perfect for a job that you're trying to fill. Now, that's the least expensive because you've done nothing. They've arrived at your doorstep. Let's escalate. Now, if you're running ads, that has a cost for the ad. It also has a cost for the screening. The screening isn't just simply talking to people, it's screening resumes. And I don't care whether you're going to tell me, well, the applicant tracking system is going to screen resumes. Well, there's so many surveys that point out that the ATS software is fuzzy at best. So what's least expensive after someone just arrives is an employee referral of someone who's worked with someone. If you can mobilize your employees as an extended recruiting arm for your group and for your firm, that is ideal because they know the people they're recommending. They have a sense of their character, their work ethic, as well as their technical skills, as well as their skills, I should say. And IT, that's their technology skills too. But think of it from the standpoint of they know the person, they like them, they trust them, they respect them. And thus, from a cost perspective, that saves you some worry if they're actually capable. The next question is, can a company fire me for poor performance after only 3 days with no reasonable steps to help me improve or a written or verbal warning on my production? Yes. Yes, they can fire you. Obviously, there was a performance issue and it bothered them. And the probability is, you didn't really put in effort. You weren't really trying. You were a pain in the rear, maybe. That's the other extreme. You were incompetent as on the one hand, and you were a pain in the rear as the other hand. And worse, you might have actually been completely negative. Yes, in the United States, most people who might be in this position are what are called at-will employees. And thus, as an at-will employee, you're working there at their will. Now, if you're fired, well, there are exceptions on all of this, but for this individual, yeah, they can fire you without warning. You've only been there for 3 days. If a company hires you as a supervisor at one pay level, can they demote you 2 months later and expect you to work as a regular staff person for a third less because the hiring manager made a mistake when you were hired? They can try that, and you don't have to accept that. I would contact the Department of Labor in your state or whatever its name is just to make sure about this one. But I would say you were mistakenly hired, and they should give you a chance to improve your skills. Making a mistake when you were hired isn't your fault, and they're trying to blame you and cut your pay pretty dramatically. So I would contact the Department of Labor and ask a question about that. Remember, you can be fired if you don't accept this, but I would also say, I would look for another job rather than do this. And yes, while you're there, do the job so you have some income coming in, but go look for another job that pays you properly. Last question for today. Why do some employers feel employees who work from 9 to 5 and punch in at or around 9 and punch it out at or around 5 aren't dedicated enough? So the interesting part is the at or around parts on both of those times, because what they tell me is, they're coming in late and leaving early. Because no one complains when you leave at 5:15. If anything, they like that. And no one minds if you come in at 8:45. They like that. But at or around basically says 9:15, 4:45, just to use those as examples. Employers like to see people who care, who are putting in the work, who are making an effort, who care. And they define care as effort. One of the simplest ways to measure effort is punctuality. Someone who's not punctual demonstrates to them in their thinking, whether you agree with it or not, it's them and their thinking that maybe you don't really like this work and you don't really care about the work. And thus, they don't see you as someone to build a department around because you don't care. Got it? They see that you're arriving late and leaving early. They don't believe you care. And if they docked your pay for those 15 minutes, suddenly you go, hey, hey, you make a noise and complain and holler and grumble. Well, they're just responding in kind and on their side. So on your side, what you have to always do is show that it matters to you. Okay? So I'm Jeff Altman. Hope you found this helpful. I'll be back on Tuesday at noon with more Career Coach office hours. If you're watching on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. On LinkedIn, share it. Do something that lets people know it was worthwhile. And thumbs up on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook as a Facebook Live, same thing. Share it. Give it a thumbs up. And again, Tuesday at noon, I'll be back again. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/The Big Game Hunter. And if you have a question for me, email me at thebiggamehunter@gmail.com. And the subject line, put the phrase office hours. I'll answer your question no later than the next show. Have a terrific day. And most importantly, be great. Take care.